Welcome in. This is College Football Tailgate. I'm Dan Watkins. John McKechnie here with me as always. I am hoping that everybody out there had a great holiday and enjoyed just the pure gluttony of Christmas week and all that kind of stuff, stuffing your face. Well, also at the same time, John, by the 26th, I'm sitting there, you've had all the conversations with family, you've stuffed your face so much, and you're just like, I need some good college football games in front of me. And finally the wait is just about over because the week off, the week and a half off between round one and round two in the college football playoff feels like a month, even though it's only 12 days.
Because you get that taste of playoff action. You're like, kind of need some more, man. Where is it? And then you got to wait so long. You got to wait till New Year's to finally get it back. But we had some stuff to tide us over. At least I thought that Saturday's bowl action was pretty fun. We've had a couple other random good games here mixed in, but nothing compares to as we get into the more serious rounds of the college football playoff. We've got a bunch of every game except for the Ohio State Miami game is expected to be a one-score game according to the odds makers. So I think this is going to deliver. Not to say that there aren't going to be a blowout or two, because that's the way college football works. But I think that we have an incredible four games here to sink our teeth in.
Yeah, 4 games that I've been going back and forth on. I could talk myself when it comes to betting, sides. I can talk myself in either direction, I think, in every single game here, except for one, and we'll get to that going on later. But yeah, Ohio State, Miami's in the Cotton Bowl. We got Oregon and Texas Tech. Orange Bowl, Miami at noon, which is just, I don't know. I just want the panoramic scene of all of Miami and that's going on down there. And I know you're down there right now. You might have to extend your trip just so you can just go do some recon Thursday morning, because I think it's just going to be a fantastic scene all over the place down there in South Florida. We got the Rose Bowl, possibly a rainy Rose Bowl between Indiana and Alabama, and then we'll cap things off with the Sugar Bowl here. But man, going to be a great slate. My question though, as we're kind of getting into these games, last year, we saw all 4 teams that had a bye going into the second round lose. Now, last year, I feel like there's a little caveat to that because you had Boise State and Arizona State in there, teams that probably shouldn't have had a bye or would not have had a bye if we were playing with this year's format where it's the top 4 teams get the byes there. So I feel like that stat can kind of be thrown out the window there, but at the same time, I don't want to sleep on any momentum that some of those 4 winners from the first round might have picked up and might be rolling with here into the second round, the quarterfinals of the college football playoff.
No, I think that's totally fair, and I think I look in particular at Indiana and Texas Tech because Indiana, I guess, did play in the college football playoff last year, but Texas Tech obviously didn't. This is their first time in it, and we saw between Miami and Texas Tech 2 very tight teams for basically the entirety of that game. You kind of figured okay, we get past halftime, maybe they're going to loosen up and we're going to see each team kind of look like we're used to seeing. But that is my concern with Texas Tech here, because Oregon comes in, basically coming off of a glorified exhibition scrimmage where they got to do whatever they felt like against JMU, just kind of work out some kinks in that offense, get some guys healthy, continue to get guys healthy with this long layoff. So I'm a little bit concerned about that when it comes to Texas Tech. And then, Indiana, I think we can kind of feel like we don't have to ask the questions about them anymore. Are they ready? Sig obviously has these guys ready to roll. I mean, they stared the bully right in the eye and beat Ohio State. They went into Oregon, won that game. They had to come back and win in the last minute against Penn State. So they've had plenty of battle tests here, but I'm a little bit worried that Alabama getting off the mat might make this a different matchup than if you told me that Alabama beats Oklahoma a couple weeks ago, I feel like I feel a little bit different about it now as opposed to when I did. I thought Oklahoma was going to win that game, of course, and it was looking pretty good early on. But Alabama getting that monkey off their back and winning that game, they really needed it after kind of a dreary final month or so of the season. I feel like that we can't say that Alabama is dead just yet.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. And I'm not doubting Indiana or anything like that. It's more so that what you were just hinting at, where it's, okay, did Alabama figure something out? And now we're going to see this team that was rolling towards the second half of September and through October. Is that team coming back, or are they more just kind of running with a a win that said more about an Oklahoma team that just kind of just like self-imploded for the second half of that game. So we'll break down that matchup in a few minutes, but I do want to start with the New Year's Eve game. We got one game on New Year's Eve, guys, 8 o'clock. We got the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State and Miami in Dallas, Texas, or Arlington, whatever it is. The Buckeyes favored by 9.5 here, John. The total sitting at just, I think, 41.5. Is that correct? Has that dropped that much? But anyways, so Ohio State favored by 9.5. Ryan Day taking over play calling for the Buckeyes. Not happy, I would say, with how the Big Ten championship game looked with Brian Hartline and 1 foot out the door as he's been hired as the USF head coach. As I start to break down this matchup and look at these two teams, Miami and Ohio State, I think the question is, does Miami have that formula that we've seen teams like Michigan and Indiana and even Oregon to a certain extent last year use to knock off Ohio State? And I kind of think Miami does, because Miami is a very physical football team. They want to just pound with you for 3.5, 4 hours. They are big up front. They have Ohio State's not going to have a huge advantage on the line of scrimmage, if they do at all, on either side of the ball here, between Miami's offensive line that I know we're both very high on, and they have first-round NFL talent on there, and then the Miami defensive line with Mesidor and Bain, who can both wreak havoc, are going to be a challenge for Ohio State here. And can Miami keep this game close enough where maybe that layoff for Ohio State, they come out a little sluggish? And we've seen this offense the past 2 games against Michigan and Indiana come out and immediately turn the ball over, where I think Miami could hit the ground running here in this game, just because they are so physical, and both lines of scrimmage are just such a strength for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, it's definitely not a cakewalk matchup for Ohio State, even though they're the biggest favorites for this round. Miami's obviously very good. They're built the right way, and there are elements that you can take away from the Texas A&M game that you wonder, like, can this apply here? Miami ran the ball in a way that they hadn't simply all season. Like, Mark Fletcher won them that game. I didn't think that was really if you ran out a million simulations of that game, like Fletcher being the key difference maker in that one was not really what I was expecting. However, at the same time, we need to see more from Beck. And I think that we have the month or so of sample leading into that playoff game where Beck was balling. I think if I mention these stats enough times, I think I remember them. I think the last 4 games of the year, he was 11-1, touchdown to interception ratio, 10 yards per pass attempt. He was dialed in down the stretch. Miami needs to be balanced. Miami needs to be able to test Ohio State through the air. My concern on the other side, while I give all the credit in the world to this Miami defensive front, I do worry that a healthy Carnell Tate and healthy Jeremiah Smith against that secondary, I think that could be an issue. I mean, we saw it last year in that Oregon game where Ohio State just comes out and they're just dropping bombs. It's crazy from the get-go, and in no way could Oregon get off the mat in that spot. So that's my concern here for Miami. They gotta limit the explosives. That I think is going to be the big deal there, because if they can't absorb those big haymakers that Ohio State is throwing, this one could get away from them.
Yeah, and I think the number one way for Miami to do that, if we're trying to paint that picture for Miami to not only cover the 9.5, but to pull off the upset, is that Ruben Bain and Mesidor need to have monster days. Again, like they did against Texas A&M. Now, I'm not saying Ruben Bain needs to have 3 sacks, a blocked field goal, 4 tackles for a loss, all that kind of stuff. But he needs to be impactful this entire game, because, like you were just mentioning, if Julian Sayin does have that extra little bit of time, Miami's not going to be able to cover those 2 wide receivers, who I do think are going to be as healthy as we've seen them since maybe October at this point, with that 3-week layoff there. Because Miami's secondary has impressed me this year compared to how we felt going into the season, but I still don't think they have that elite talent back there where they're going to be able to cover those guys for 60 minutes constantly. And if Sayin has that time and he has a clean pocket, he's going to be able to find them, or find the tight ends, or hit the running back out of the backfield, where I'm just not sure that Miami has enough in the coverage aspect to be able to cover those guys. So I think it really just starts with those 2 monsters up front for Miami.
Right, so therein lies, I think, the balance of this game is what Miami's able to do defensively to get Sayin off his spot, because I think Sayin, even if he wasn't great in that last game, that's literally just one game where he wasn't pretty surgical throughout the game. If he is able to just stand back there and deliver. I mean, his ball placement, his accuracy is kind of second to none in college football right now, or at least relative to the rest of the quarterbacks that are still in the college football playoff field. If he's able to just deliver those shots, I think that this could be a big problem for Miami. I'm not saying that it's a guarantee that that's going to happen, but that's how this game kind of gets away from the Canes.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to see how Julian Sand comes out in the first quarter in this game, because the last 2 times we've seen him at Michigan and then in the Big Ten championship game, first drive interceptions for Sand, and he's also coming off what you could probably say is like his worst performance of the year against Indiana, right? 21 of 29 for 258 yards, that opening drive interception, sacked 5 times in that game, and then Ohio State also could not punch the ball in once they got down to the red zone. So I have my eye on him for this one. Bo Jackson, they're going to need a little more out of him, I think, out of the backfield too. And then as you were mentioning, I mean, Carson Beck really is the true wild card, where if he brings his A game, like, it's going to look pretty good. And I do think he'll be able to make some plays with Tony and Daniel and these guys and these receivers. But the question is he going to bring that A game? Because if he repeats what he did against A&M, which was not that great, it's not going to be anywhere near enough to take down Ohio State.
Our intrepid listeners last week were pretty wise to point out, I think I kind of papered over it when we were breaking down, what happened between Miami and A&M. The conditions were not really conducive to throwing the ball. It was really, really windy there at Kyle Field. You're going to be in the Cotton Bowl, neutral conditions, dome-style setup there. So I do think that the Miami passing game like that, they won't have that hurdle to clear in this one. Now, I don't think that they can just kind of reverse course and be able to just pound the ball and beat Ohio State that way. But I do think at the very least that the elements won't be a factor for Carson Beck, and therefore, a little bit of a cleaner path. You can see it a little bit better as far as Miami having some success through the air.
Sure. All right. So what do the computers say, and what's your pick for this game?
The computers, let's see here. SP Plus by old Bill C. He's got Ohio State winning by 10.5, and FEI has it right on the number with Ohio State winning by 9.6 points in that one. Let's see what the overall point total is that they're giving out. Just 40.5.
Yeah, it's dropped too. It was 42.5 Sunday night, and now it's down to 40.5. So money coming in.
Reflexively, I'm gonna say that's too low. I mean, it's so tantalizing. It's almost like we're getting dared to do it. But I think Ohio State's offense comes correct in this spot, and I think that Beck ends up having a pretty solid game here. So I think that we can get over this number. It's again, we're getting begged to do it, just 40.5. But I think that we sail over that one. I think this game gets into the mid 40s, maybe even low 50s. But I think Ohio State wins. I'm gonna say they cover too. I'm gonna go there. I got to stick to my guns and kind of back up what I'm saying, where I still think that Ohio State is the best team in the country.
Yeah, I'm going to ride the fence on this one. I think Ohio State wins this game. I think they have just a little bit too much for Miami to handle. But I do think the Hurricanes, the U, is going to be able to cover in this one. I think this game is going to be much tighter than Ohio State maybe expecting going into this one, where I just think Miami is so physical up front that Ohio State's not really going to be able to pull away in this game until late. So give me Ohio State 24-17, the final. Just getting over that number if you get that 40.5. But I like Miami plus 9.5. That's going to be on my card this week.
The kickers need to get it figured out. Again, better conditions in this one, but Ohio State missed a big kick in Indy. And
true.
Miami could not hit the broadside of a barn.
I don't know. Call Brandon Aubrey. Ask him for his tips, since that dude's basically hitting from 70 inside Jerry World these days. So maybe he's got a little extra strategy or something for this one for these guys. Anything would be better than what we saw at Kyle Field. For sure. All right, moving on. New Year's Day at noon in Miami, Hard Rock Stadium. We got Oregon as a 2.5-point favorite taking on Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl. We got a total sitting at 51.5. Like I'm saying, I like the scenes outside of the stadium. This one I think are going to be just as incredible as the scenes inside. Like someone's got to have a webcam going or something, some sort of stream so we can just see people probably leaving their New Year's celebrations, for one, in Miami, and maybe just going right to this game. I don't know. But anyways, that's an early kick, 11 a.m. local time if you're a Texas Tech fan, or 9 a.m. local time if you're an Oregon fan. So have that coffee ready to go. John, as we look at these two teams, I think we're going to find out real quick if Texas Tech is this elite, nasty defense that we've seen all season, if they truly are that, which I think they very well could be, or have they just been beating up on the Big 12, where we have seen Texas Tech in all of their wins this season win by at least 21 points. They have not lost when Behren Morton plays. And then on the other side, you got the speed of Oregon, who's getting healthier, as you mentioned earlier at the start of the show, just kind of playing with their food, working out, ironing out some kinks and stuff like that against James Madison. So it's a fascinating dynamic between these two teams. You got the physicality, that nastiness of Texas Tech, and you got that speed of Oregon. And historically, I feel like Oregon, like in these spots, like the physical team has been able to take it to them. I'm really curious to see if that trend kind of breaks this week, because I don't know. There's just something where I feel like Oregon might be starting to peak here, even though Texas Tech's been playing some great football as of late as well.
Yeah, so like I was saying, I am worried about the Texas Tech rust factor here, and again, them playing a little bit tight here. But I think what they can lean on is something that I think can carry them. And I think that comes with that front seven in particular. I mean, David Bailey, Romello Height, Rodriguez, the other inside linebacker, like all huge difference makers. And I think that can just be like a steadying presence for them where, you know, if you're concerned about Behren Morton on the other side, which I think is completely fair, you know that defense is going to be able to kind of like keep them in this game. So that's kind of like my opening remarks for this game. I just think that Texas Tech defense has been what's gotten them there, and I think that tends to be a recipe that carries on into deep playoff runs. So Oregon's just not going to be able to land the shots that they did against James Madison. I'm sure that they're not getting into like some false sense of security, thinking that they can do that once again against this Texas Tech team. But what happens when you're not getting 4 touchdowns right off the jump on big, deep shots from Dante Moore to those receivers? What happens then? Are you going to be able to run the ball? I like the stable of running backs for Oregon. However, Texas Tech, arguably the best run defense in the country thanks to that front seven. So ultimately, I think that the Texas Tech defense is what keeps them in it. I think the Texas Tech can run the ball enough with their guys, Jacoby Williams, Cameron Dickey, and then they have enough weaponry to kind of prop up Behren Morton and guys that can just kind of like make plays. He just gets the ball out quickly, gets it done that way. It's not the Texas Tech of old where it's just air raid, short, quick passes, keep it intermediate, ride with Coy Aiken and Caleb Douglas and those guys, and just make it work just enough on offense to let your defense kind of go out there and win the game. That's how I'm envisioning this one, at least on the Texas Tech side.
Yeah, so if you look at Oregon, right, in the 2 games that they've lost over the last 2 calendar years, you got the Indiana game this year and you got the Ohio State game in the Rose Bowl a year ago. They were held under 280 yards of total offense in each of those games, which for Oregon, that is basically making that offense crater. And in both of those games, last year's Rose Bowl and the Indiana game this year, they had under 3 yards per carry on the ground when it comes to running the football. Now, Texas Tech, you would assume, does have the blueprint to be able to do that. If anyone can do that to Oregon here in this playoff, it would be Texas Tech because, well, they're number 1 against the run this season in the country. My question, though, and what I'm wondering is, have they seen an offensive line like Oregon's this year with some of the Big 12 teams they've played? And then when it comes to the weapons for Oregon, right, Texas Tech has not seen a receiving core like what Oregon's got. If Oregon's fully healthy with Moore and Bryant and maybe Evan Stewart, who knows? He went through warm-ups before taking all of his pads off and not playing against JMU. Maybe another 2 weeks. He's good to go here, but you got Sadiq as the tight end as well. So that's interesting. And then I think back to the one time that Texas Tech lost this season was the Arizona State game. And yes, Morton did not play, and they were missing a piece on the defensive line in that game as well out in Tempe. But Jordan Tyson had a monster game against them, and they have not seen anyone else kind of like Tyson really this year when it comes to a wide receiver, where Oregon might have a guy or 2 or maybe even 3 pass catchers who can do something like that. So I do think that's a really interesting dynamic here. And I'm just feeling with Oregon getting healthy that it might just be a little bit too much, but I think we're going to get points here in this game. I think this game has all the makings of just being weird. and like all over the place, and we're going to get maybe some scoop and scores, some big plays and stuff like that. I do think both these offenses are going to be able to put up points here down there in Miami in an early game where, as you were kind of hinting to, a little bit of a concern of a sluggish start for Texas Tech in this one. I do want to pull this up from ESPN that I saw. The Red Raiders have played 5 games against teams that have achieved winning records this season. They scored touchdowns on just 32% of drives that reached the red zone, totaling 13 field goals and 8 touchdowns in 25 opportunities in those games. That percentage versus winning teams ranks 4th worst in the FBS. So if Oregon can keep them out of the end zone, I mean, right, that's pretty much goes without saying when it comes to predicting any game. If a defense can keep the other offense out of the end zone, it's going to do well. But Texas Tech's red zone struggles here. I think they're going to have to find a way to work around those, or because I don't think they can beat Oregon by just kicking field goals.
Yeah, because that was a big gripe, if you remember, coming out of that Texas Tech win over BYU the first time in Lubbock. It's
right.
Just like BYU, I mean, they got beat, but like the scoreboard didn't really reflect it because Texas Tech just kept settling for field goals. You definitely can't do that in this spot. I don't think. Again, I do trust that Texas Tech defense to keep a bit of a lid on this Oregon offense, but Texas Tech absolutely needs to convert on its opportunities. Let any opportunity that's left on the table at this stage of the season could be what ultimately undoes you. So that's a huge key. I do agree where Texas Tech has struggled to punch it in, but I think that like the sum of their parts, like I really like their 1-2 punch of Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey. I think that we saw those guys play well against BYU in the Big 12 championship game. Take a page from that playbook, from that game plan, and try to replicate that as best as you can, because I do think that they have the talent to kind of like fix those red zone woes. And if anything, statistically, maybe they're due for some positive regression as far as the touchdowns go.
Sure, absolutely. All right, what do we got from the computers? What's your prediction for this one? I remember back from our overall playoff predictions, we're going to be on the opposite side here of this game, but what do you got?
Yep, and the computers also on opposite sides here. So me and
Love
Bill
that.
C, both of us like Texas Tech. That SP Plus has Texas Tech winning by 2.5 points. I have Texas Tech winning by, let's say, 3 points. Why not? I like a nice round number that can exist. And then FEI has Oregon winning this one 26-20. So Oregon winning this one by close to a touchdown, but the under coming in, I believe, on both of these particular projections.
So back when we did our playoff predictions, I said Oregon's going to the national championship game. I got no reason to change that right now. I think they're getting healthy, and yeah, I'm gonna trust Dan Lanning one more time against a very physical team here and see if they can get it done. I think Oregon's had that bad taste in their mouth from the Rose Bowl a year ago. I think they're gonna come out ready to go, and I just trust what they got with their weapons and stuff like that on offense, that they're gonna be able to get the job done here. Give me Oregon to cover the 2.5, and give me the over 2. Like I said, I think this game's gonna be weird, and we're gonna get plenty of points here and get that 51.5.
Sticking to it, I love it. I think that this is the most, like, just matchup wise, I think the most interesting game of these 4. We don't know exactly how Texas Tech responds in this, and we're still kind of waiting for Oregon to kind of get over that proverbial hump. So a lot going in on this one. I cannot wait.
Yeah, if you had to power rank the 4 matchups of watchability and which one you're can't wait to sit down and watch, this is number 1 for me. I've been fascinated with this matchup since the bracket came out.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think the other 3 you can kind of argue either way, but this one to me is just the mystery box of intrigue. Too much.
Very good. All right, moving on. 4 o'clock Thursday, New Year's Day. I mean, what else are you doing other than sitting down and watching the Rose Bowl? Maybe a rainy Rose Bowl. We got a forecast of 60 and rain in Pasadena on Thursday. What is this? I don't like that.
All right. Here, let me put your concerns at ease. If we know one thing about the Rose Bowl committee, they're the most powerful people in America.
True.
We're going to get the weather machine fixed and ready to go, so we're going to have a beautiful sunset over the mountains there.
Good. I like that. There's nothing that I look forward to more starting my year off than seeing that sunset over those mountains and everything in the Rose Bowl and listening to Kirk and Chris talk about it while there's a football game going on. But anyways, there is a potential flood watch in Pasadena on Thursday for any of you who might be out there too. But let's talk about these teams. Indiana, favored by 7 points over Alabama. What a world we live in. A total of 47.5. I mean, like, we've known Indiana's been good for 2 years. Like, we've seen how good they've been this year. And yet still, when I see Indiana favored by a touchdown over Alabama, my jaw drops. I'm just like, what are we, like, where are we? What planet are we living on? But there is a reason for that. The Hoosiers have just been so good and so consistent all year long, where Alabama, well, I'm not really sure what we're going to get out of them on Thursday afternoon. And it's really a question, John, can Alabama take that last 40 minutes against Oklahoma in round one and stretch that out for a full 60 minutes against Indiana? Because what we know with this Indiana team and Coach Sig and those guys is that you have to play for all 60 minutes, because if you have a bad quarter against Indiana like Bama did against Oklahoma, they're like, yeah, exactly. You're going to get smushed. Like, that's just how it's going to be here. Like, Indiana is just so good, and they're just too disciplined, right, to have a bad quarter against them. So it's, how do these two teams come out? How do they look? Yeah, Indiana was in the playoff last year, so that eases my concern a little bit. But like you were hinting at, offense took a little bit to get going in that Big Ten championship game. Now, they were playing quite possibly the best defense in the country, a defense that's a lot better than this Alabama defense, I feel like. But what do you expect from the Rose Bowl Thursday afternoon?
So I'm going to start by not being able to attribute this properly, but somebody who knows their X's and O's on Twitter better than I was pointing out, because what have we talked about when it comes to Alabama all year is their inability to run the ball. But they were talking about this Indiana front seven, the way that they kind of like shift, move around, and kind of attack certain zones. Like, this could either result in a redux of the Georgia game in the SEC championship game, where Alabama just is stuck in the mud in the backfield all day, or this could be the best rushing day that we've seen Alabama have all season with no in-between. That was his argument. Those aren't my words. But I think it's an interesting thing to point out, because we've kind of taken it for a given for the bulk of this season that Alabama's just not going to run the ball. And they're not going to be able to have success even when they do attempt it. So, again, you know, how much do you trust Ty Simpson? I trust him a fair bit, and it's weird to say that, you know, Ryan Williams not really a huge factor for them at this point, but Latsier Brooks, Jeremy Bernard, and Isaiah Horton, I think, have really stepped up. Josh Cuevas should be healthier. I think he's a really big X factor in this game as far as the Alabama's success through the air is concerned. I think if you look at the coaching here, I give the edge to Cignetti. If you're kind of comparing the quarterbacks, I think it's close to a wash, probably a slight edge towards Mendoza. I think you look at the receivers, probably about a wash, I would say as well. I'm worried about Indiana's defensive speed and depth versus what Alabama has also on the other side. Like, they are just a deeper team. Like, they're going to be able to keep guys fresher over the course of this game. So if Alabama is able to sustain drives here, I'm worried about Indiana kind of getting gassed on defense, whereas Alabama, I think you can just kind of roll guys in. You know that they have high pedigree. You know that they've been playing like this all season long. So it could be a big challenge here for this Indiana offense to sustain over the course of 60 minutes here. So I think that Alabama is going to be able to keep this one close. I'm going to ride the fence like you did in the first game here. I'm going to say that Indiana edges them out, but I think it's really close. It flies in the face of what the metrics are telling us. The metrics, both of them, have Indiana winning this one by double digits. In fact, I'm going to just choose to willfully ignore them. I'm going to say Alabama loses by a field goal.
It's like one of those things where it's just like, okay, like, I'm still feeling the same way I felt right after that Oklahoma game, where it's like, did Alabama just figure something out? And, like, has this sleeping giant been awoken? I'm not sure that they're quite ready to go on a national championship run, but I do think they're ready to go in and give Indiana a very tight game. Now, where I'm looking at for this game is these two defensive lines, right? You got Alabama's defensive line and their pass rush, which, like, all of a sudden came to life in that round one game. I want to make sure I get these numbers right. They're going to have to recreate or get close to what they did against Oklahoma, where they had 5 sacks and 7 tackles for a loss. They also held Oklahoma to under 2 yards per carry. That's going to be tough to do against Indiana, but if Bama can keep Indiana around 3.5 yards per carry, I think that sets the Tide up very well. And then on the other side, how big is that loss of Stephen Daly? right? He gets hurt in the celebration in the Big Ten championship game. He was a huge player for them down the stretch. He was like consistently in the backfield, and then he gets hurt in the celebration. So this is going to be the first time that we see this Hoosiers defense without him, which could play into that theory that you were just laying out there, where now their depth is going to be really tested, not just in the secondary against these wide receivers, but also up front too, where I do think that's interesting, and that might be an advantage for Alabama. And then another point that I just want to piggyback off of what you were saying is Alabama extending drives. So they were able to have that big comeback against Oklahoma, yet they only went 2 of 12 on third down against the Sooners in that round 1 game. They're going to have to be a lot better than that, I think, to beat Indiana in this game. And can Alabama really hold this football and keep these long drives going, kind of going with that formula against for round 1 against Georgia, where they held the ball for, 35 minutes in that game in Athens?
They got every third down that they needed in that game. I think they were like 13 for 18 in that one, but they were obviously, they've been abysmal on third down the last 2 weeks. So, which one, what is it, Tide?
Right.
Which one are you?
It's so hot and cold with them where it could be one of those positive regression things that you were hinting at with Texas Tech earlier. Like now maybe Alabama goes, 7 of 11 on third down, and they just keep moving the chains and stuff like that. And then another thing here that I'm looking at for Alabama, Ty Simpson's going to have that stretch, right, where he is on an absolute heater at some point in this game. Like, I can't see any other way of Alabama winning this football game unless we see Ty Simpson go on like an 11 of 13 stretch for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. At some point, he's going to have to be that guy and look like the Heisman candidate that we saw from the first half of this season. Not the guy that's been turning the ball over quite a bit and not really putting up much yardage for the second half of this season. And then one other thing, too, that I've been wondering, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is Indiana due for a slip-up, right? It is hard to rattle off 14 straight wins. Right, and we have seen this team just be so locked in and so well coached, so disciplined, and they just had that monster win over Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Now you get 2-3 weeks off. Do we see that slip up finally happen here?
And I think it's interesting because turnovers can be one of those finicky things, right? And it's been a calling card for Indiana this year. They have 25 takeaways, and they've only given the ball away 8 times. Mm-hmm. What if that turnover margin's a little bit closer to even? What if they don't get any takeaways? What if they turn the ball over? These are questions you can ask about any game, of course. But I think that sure. Indiana is a particularly extreme example of turnover favoritism or turnover. I don't want to say luck. I don't think there's luck necessarily in them just taking the ball away 25 times. Like that's a strong statement that this is how these guys are coached. But if you're not getting them against Alabama, how does your defense create opportunities? How does your defense create stops without just simply, getting fumbles and interceptions? So I'm interested there. And again, if Ty Simpson's if Fernando Mendoza is getting heated up a little bit, turns the ball over, how does Indiana respond? Because they simply haven't had to very much this year. 8 in 14 games or 13 games, crazy.
Right. Yeah, and I think Mendoza's got 5 in his last 6 games or something like that, too. So he has almost been good for 1 pick a game. It's just, can Alabama turn that into something or maybe even run back a pick 6 like they did in round 1? You're riding the fence, taking the Tide to cover, but Indiana to win. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I like Alabama to cover the 7 points here. I think there's too much talent with Alabama and that they might have figured something out here, that they're going to give Indiana everything they can handle, but I do think the Hoosiers ultimately come out with the win. I'm going to go with a 27-24, something like that, and we sneak over in the Rose Bowl on Thursday afternoon. All right, one more game to get to, guys, and I know this is the one that John's been waiting for. Sugar Bowl, Georgia, Ole Miss. The Dogs favored by 6.5. We got a total, the highest on the board here for round 2 at 55.5. Georgia returns to the scene where the season ended a year ago, where Gunnar Stockton had his first start. Season ends. And you're also getting a rematch from a game back in October where, Georgia scored every single time they touched the ball. And that game, John, right, which was a 43-35 win, way back in the Lane Kiffin era for Ole Miss, right? Georgia gets that win, and I'm looking at that, and I'm wondering, did something click for the Dogs in the second half of that game? Was that the turning point of the season for this defense? Because, yes, they gave up touchdowns the first 5 times Ole Miss touched the ball. Trinidad Chambliss was looking awesome in his first career SEC road start. And then the last 3 drives, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, and another punt with like 5 plays in that drive for Ole Miss. And since then, it's really been off to the races for this Georgia defense, which has just looked like a more typical Georgia defense that we've been used to seeing here this past half decade or so. And as I'm just going to give my thoughts quickly, then I'll let you do everything you got to do here with your dogs. But I think Ole Miss is going to be severely overmatched in this game. I think both on the field and when it comes to the coaching staff. Ole Miss's defense, I think they kind of put a little bit of a lipstick on the pig when you look at that box score against Tulane a few weeks ago. Tulane had over 400 yards of offense in that game, guys. Tulane constantly drove the ball into Ole Miss territory. They just couldn't capitalize, and they couldn't keep converting, and they also just kept shooting themselves in the foot. Georgia's not going to do that. Georgia, I think, is going to score just about every single time they touch the ball here again in this game. And I'm also curious, how locked in is the Ole Miss coaching staff? And does that sugar high, for lack of a better term, of Lane leaving kind of come down here? Like, how locked in is this offensive coaching staff with all of them knowing that they have a job in LSU and they don't really have anything else to prove because, well, you lose to Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Like, that's still a pretty good season for Ole Miss. So I love the dogs to win and cover here at 6.5. One of my favorite plays of the week.
Yeah, it's a really interesting matchup, and I've kind of like, just for my own mental health, just sort of like just enjoyed the week in between.
Sure.
Like you've kind of, as a Georgia fan, like you've known that this was going to be the matchup since the bracket was released.
Right.
You knew that Ole Miss was going to have absolutely no trouble putting Tulane away. So it's just, how do we match up round 2? And I think that Ole Miss, their offense still scares me. I think Trinidad Chambliss is still playing at an unbelievably high level, and I think that Ole Miss's weaponry is extremely deep. I mean, Stribling, Lacey, Daquan Wright, you've got the great running back as well. So, I mean, they've got so much offensively that can sting you one way or the other. They all have kind of like different roles, and they're able to execute them. And Ole Miss, obviously still having Charlie Weiss Jr. there, things should be operational as far as that offense is concerned. But, I mean, Georgia's defense did really kind of turn the page basically during the fourth quarter of that game against Ole Miss. Dominant performances otherwise down the stretch there. Obviously against Alabama in the SEC championship game. I think you look at that Texas game, even the Miss State game in Starkville, and you're like, wow, I mean, this defense, it kind of looks like what it's supposed to. Big potential injury absence for Georgia is Gabe Harris. He's really ascended nicely along the defensive line, so I think he's got a turf toe. We'll see if he's able to go in this spot, but I mean, the way that Georgia was able to generate pressure against Alabama, if they're able to even come close to replicating in this game, I know that Chambliss is a lot more mobile than Ty Simpson is, and mobile quarterbacks historically have been the ones that have given Kirby Smart defenses the most fits. But I do think that this is a defense that has turned the page, and offensively, Gunnar Stockton has done so much to silence me and the doubters this year, but we still need to see it again. Right, like he was set up in good position. I think a lot in that Alabama game, and he responded. I mean, he completed almost 80% of his passes, had the 3 touchdowns in that game. But if this ends up having to be a little bit more of a back and forth, can he replicate what he did against Ole Miss that first time? And if he's not sharp, I do think that Georgia is going to be able to run the ball extremely effectively here, but between Nate Frazier and Chauncey Bowens, Josh McCray in short yardage situations like. That, I think, is going to be kind of what ultimately keeps Ole Miss at arm's length, is just Georgia's ability to sustain drives, go on those kind of Kirby death marches, and just running the ball, 12-play touchdown drives, that type of thing. That ultimately, I think, is what's going to put Ole Miss away. They're going to be in kind of like, we have to score here, and you kind of get out of your rhythm. You turn the ball over on downs, you punt it away, any of those things, and all of a sudden, Georgia responds with another one of those, and you're kind of SOL, basically. So that's how I envision this game going. I think we're going to see real back and forth for the first half, but as this game wears on and Georgia's offense is able and offensive line is able to lean on the Rebs defense, I think that's where the story of this game ultimately gets written. So I like Georgia to cover this one as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how Ole Miss is going to get stops in this game outside of self-inflicted wounds by Georgia here, where it's a fumble, a botched snap, something like that. I just think Georgia's going to have too much. And if we talked about at the very beginning of the show, right, how all 4 teams that were on the bye lost this round last year. If I had to stack up the 4 teams going into this week that are coming off the bye, Georgia's the one I'm by far the most confident in, that they're going to be ready to go. They're right back in the exact same spot where their season ended a year ago. Like, Kirby's going to have them ready to go. I just really like the way Georgia's playing, too. I think they are peaking, and I think they're playing some of the best football in the country right now. And I just don't think Ole Miss is going to have the answer. And it sounds like you feel the same way. How do the computers feel about this one, by the way?
So the computers are kind of split on this one. In fact, Bill C and the SP Plus actually have this as the closest game
really?
of the first round. It actually has Georgia winning by less than a point. And FEI actually has Ole Miss covering this one just barely with the final score of UGA 32, Ole Miss 26. I side with FEI on this one. I think that Georgia can push for 35, 38 points in this one. I think Ole Miss gets to 28, and there we have it.
So it sounds like you really like the over in this game.
Yeah, I do. I think Ole Miss's offense deserves all the respect. I think it's so dangerous and so multiple, and I think that the fact that the coaching staff was able to stay intact for this playoff run on the offensive side, that brain trust, and just kind of like, if you're Ole Miss, like, there is just something to be said for, like, F it, man. Like,
sure.
Lane left us. Like, we're just playing free. We're just throwing haymakers and seeing what happens here the rest of the way. So I think that Ole Miss is a dangerous live wire in that aspect, but I think that defense is going to be what kind of undoes Ole Miss ultimately in this setup.
Yeah, I agree with you there on that last point. All right, so that's going to do it for our breakdowns for this round 2 of the College Football Playoff. If you like those breakdowns or you just like the show and you're still watching, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We're at College Football Tailgate. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. College Football Tailgate on all 3 platforms. We are on Twitter at CFB Tailgate 25. You can follow us on TikTok and have some real fun in the comments section there at CFB Tailgate as well. And do us a favor on top of that, just like the video too. It helps. It goes a long way as we continue to try to build this thing here. But thank you very much if you've been watching. It means the world to us as we continue to do this show. All right, John, time to put our cards on the table. Betting card, your best bets for round 2 of the College Football Playoff and any other bowl games this New Year's week.
All right, so I'll hit you with my playoff picks first. I got Texas Tech on the money line. You can get that at plus 115 over at BetMGM. I got Alabama plus 7 as well. Those are my 2 official CFP plays. Beyond that, other bowl games this week, I like USC minus 6.5 against TCU. I just don't think TCU is all that good. I got the under, unfortunately, in Miss State versus Wake Forest. I think Wake kind of runs it a lot, and I think that Miss State's offense is a little bit herky-jerky here as we get to the finish line here with Blake Shapen being banged up. I really like Arizona minus 2.5 as well to round out my card. The quietest 9-3 team in the nation this year. I think that they cap it off nicely there in the Holiday Bowl.
Interesting. All right, we're definitely going to be going head-to-head in a couple of these games. This is the first time I think we've had multiple head-to-head spots, but no over in the Sugar Bowl? I thought for sure that'd be on your card.
Throw it on there.
Okay. Peer pressure. It does wonders, folks. All right. Anyways, this is what I got. Give me Miami plus 9.5. I think the Canes are going to be physical enough to keep this game close and within 10 points. I'm going to go Oregon minus 2.5, going head-to-head with John here, but I got the Ducks going to the national championship. Don't let me down, Dan Lanning. I'm going to take the over in the Orange Bowl as well, over 51.5. I'm taking Bama plus 7, Georgia minus 6.5, and then 2 other bowl games. I actually like SMU a lot in that Holiday Bowl. They're going to be pretty much fully staffed and fully they got pretty much everybody playing in that one, including Kevin Jennings at quarterback. I think that might just be a little bit too much for Arizona, but I'm going to take the 3 points there with SMU. And then finally, Wake Forest plus 3.5 in the Mayo Bowl. Mississippi State, guys, is a 5-win football team. They should not even be in a bowl game. Give me the points there. Jake Dicker and his squad, I think, can keep this game within a field goal, if not outright win it.
Sprite Burgers. So that's not technically head-to-head. We're just saying I like the total in that one, and you like Wake. I can dig it.
Right. But we're going head-to-head in 2 other spots there this week,
right.
so we'll figure that out. All right. Some other little news and nuggets here to wrap things up. Michigan, they've found their man. Kyle Whittingham saying it's his final challenge of his coaching career. John, Kyle Whittingham's now the head coach at Michigan, and I feel like almost the same way I did when Penn State hired Matt Campbell and that whole saga ended. Like, Yeah, it was messy and like it didn't look good at points, but ultimately, I think they hit a home run here with the hire. Like obviously, Kyle Whittingham's not going to be there for 10 to 15 years. The guy's 66, going on 67 years old. But I think for the next 5 years to get Michigan back to respectability and what they were at the end under Harbaugh, I think Whittingham's the perfect guy. And I'm also fascinated to see what Kyle Whittingham's going to do with all those resources for a change. Not that Utah's a poverty program by any means, but having that Michigan backing behind him, I'm really intrigued to see what Kyle Whittingham's going to do here. And if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm a little nervous going forward too with Whittingham up there at the big house.
Well, believe it or not, the Buckeye Nation thinks that this is a joke of a hire. I don't know if you can believe that or not, but
shocking.
I think what Whittingham does with his football teams identity-wise is I think what Michigan really wants to do anyway. So I think that this is a really nice schematic cultural fit for Michigan. I think it's also positive that I think Kyle Whittingham follows 5 females on his social media platforms, and he's related to all of them. So you don't have to worry about the Sharon Moore stuff quite as much. But yeah, it is interesting in that it's, I wouldn't call it a Band-Aid, but it is something where that we don't have the longest shelf life here to get this done as far as Whittingham's tenure there at Michigan. But I think that, for these next few years here, Michigan has the extremely deep coffers. They have a really talented roster. I think that Whittingham's going to be able to kind of just get them to play a little bit more focused and mistake-free and a little bit tougher here over his tenure. So I like this hire a lot for Michigan. I think that comparison to Penn State and Matt Campbell, where it's a total disaster. Your program's the laughingstock of the internet for weeks on end, and then ultimately you kind of end up with a really nice hire. Very, very similar situation. So I think that Michigan made out well here, all things considered. The timing was a huge challenge. I really thought that Michigan was going to have to just kind of go to the NFL, maybe go and see if Jesse Minter wanted to come back to Ann Arbor, that type of thing. But Whittingham, a really interesting name, and that came together really quickly. I think on Friday it was like he's being rumored, and then the ink is dry. So I think that was a good one for Michigan. I think that they'll be back to respectability here soon.
Yeah, I like that. And since we're talking about Penn State, more coaching news. Yes, you got Matt Campbell as your head coach. D'Anton Lynn heading back to Happy Valley, where he is an alum. He will be the defensive coordinator there for the Nittany Lions going forward in 2026. I like that move a lot, too. I mean, D'Anton Lynn helped kind of make that USC defense look more respectable there. I like that move. It's funny, as much of a joke as Penn State looked like for the entire second half of October and the month of November, they've kind of come out of this cycle, this coaching cycle, smelling like roses here, and really have a nice foundation to hit the ground running in the Matt Campbell era.
Yeah, that's a nice, I think I trusted Matt Campbell, he's one of those guys where it's whoever he brings in, I feel like you should give a certain benefit of the doubt to, but I think that's a really nice hire, whereas he might not have been able to maximize resources quite so much at Iowa State. At Penn State, kind of swinging the big hammer that he has available to him to get a guy like Lynn from USC there, bring him back, and I think that's a strong start to rounding out his coaching staff. So Penn State, might be tempered expectations for next year, but I think in the long run this ends up being a really successful tenure there for Campbell at Penn State.
So one last little coaching news item, and this is something that I'm going to be honest, I was starting to get a little nervous about with some of the NFL rumors that were starting to trickle out there. But that anxiety has just been shoved down, and we are ready to beat our chest because Marcus Freeman on this Monday, December 29th, has tweeted out, quote, 2026, run it back, go Irish. Marcus Freeman will remain the head coach in South Bend. Pat Forty, Sports Illustrated, tweeting out that he's going to be paid in the top tier of coaches, which I do think is the right move going forward. I was hinting at this when some of those rumors about LSU or Penn State or Florida or so on were going on during the season. But rightfully so, Marcus Freeman will remain in South Bend. When Bavacqua, the AD for Notre Dame, was doing his whole media tour after the Irish were left out of the playoffs, he said, quote, one of my main obligations and responsibilities to this university is to make sure Marcus wakes up every day knowing that he is supported and valued by Notre Dame. And I can say with 100% certainty that he feels that way, and Notre Dame is totally aligned around the importance of college football for Notre Dame. We're totally aligned on how he is the perfect coach for Notre Dame. And then he also added that he views Freeman's contract as a, quote, living, breathing document that will likely be revised every year. And I think if you are a major college football program, like 99% of the FBS schools, you need to treat if you like your head coach, you need to treat your head coach like this every single year going forward, because that's just the reality that we live in. And I am very happy that Marcus Freeman will remain on the sidelines there in South End in 2026 and hopefully beyond.
Yeah, I think Freeman just, we talked about it back in, October, November when Florida opened up and everything. It's just like, why does Marcus Freeman always get bandied about? It's like, because he's that good. Like, he is sort of like the best possible like coach that you could like dream on type of thing. So I don't think he's leaving Notre Dame anytime soon. Obviously, Monday's developments kind of solidify that. But he's also, to me, he's like one of those coaches that I could see actually having success at the NFL level. Like a lot of the times those don't work, but I think that Freeman, like, he's just that kind of guy. He's just kind of like that leader who knows how to just get everyone in line with each other. And I think for you got to be happy that he's going to continue to do that in South Bend. You got CJ Carr coming back. You'll have to see what the new backfield looks like, of course, and move some things around with the new receiving core. A lot of those guys are aging out, but man, you got to like what the direction of this program is going in under Freeman, and that's gets to continue. So kudos to you.
Absolutely. I'm pumped. And like you just mentioned, CJ Carr, 2026 will be the first time that Marcus Freeman has had a returning starter at quarterback too. So I'm very intrigued to see how that's going to look. Carr was awesome this year in his first year as a starter. I expect him to be even better next year in 2026. And then you mentioned wide receivers. Well, the transfer portal is about to open up later this week, guys, and we got the first big-time name at wide receiver going in. Cam Coleman has announced that he is heading to the transfer portal after 2 years at Auburn. Fascinated to see where he's going to go. I feel like every single big-time program is going to be at this kid's doorstep here in the coming days. Kind of sounds like he's going to stay in the SEC. He's from Alabama. He was originally recruited and committed to Texas A&M before Jimbo and that coaching staff got blown out there. I mean, I'm sure Lane Kiffin's going to be calling him too. Like, it seems like he's staying in the SEC. But, like, I'm just hoping that he doesn't go to Alabama, honestly, at this point.
Same here, and I'm sure that Auburn fans really echo that sentiment. It's one thing to lose Cam Coleman, but to lose him to Alabama would be pretty crushing. But it would be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I always feel weird when a guy, like, transfers to the direct rival of the school and everything. But, yeah, the list of suitors for Cam Coleman is going to be a long one.
I was going to say everybody.
Yeah. He'll cut that down. He's only going to be looking at the blue chip programs. He deserves that level of just sort of like self-confidence. I know that the numbers may not bear it out from this past year, but also, did you pay attention to Auburn this year? Like they couldn't throw the ball basically at any point this season. It's a big loss for Alex Golish coming in there. We were talking about with Summerall at Florida, it's like you want to keep your best players. I got a lot of pushbacks to even imply that DJ Lagway was any good at all from Florida fans, which was a funny little dynamic there. But Coleman, I don't think any Auburn fan would argue with you, is probably the best player pound for pound on that team. So
he's a freak.
He's unbelievable. I hope that if he doesn't go to Georgia, that he goes somewhere that he's not on Georgia's schedule, because he's an absolute alpha. He's an absolute dude. If he was eligible this year, he would be the first receiver off the board. I'm pretty confident in that.
Yeah, for sure. And next year, I mean, if it wasn't for a guy named Jeremiah Smith, he'd be the first wide receiver taken in the 2027 NFL draft, but he's going to be a first-round pick in 2027, that's for sure. All right, I think that's going to do it for us. We'll be back probably next week to kind of recap these games quickly and then look ahead to the semifinals, which is coming up quickly. This schedule has gone from dragged out to condensed real quick, and we get to the sprint here. We're going to have portal news, probably some more coaching news too. But anyways, it's been a pleasure, guys. Enjoy the games this week. We'll talk to you next week. For John, I'm Dan. This is College Football Tailgate. Hit that subscribe button.